Mr. Matt DiBara, how are you?
Dominic, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a while since we talked.
Gosh, like a couple months now.
Couple of months, but you are an extremely busy guy.
That is true.
I guess a lot of us are busy in construction right now, but especially yourself. I mean, you're known as the celebrity contractor in some circles. You've got some great stories behind that.
Yeah, I do. Thank you.
Hey, Matt, before we get started, who the heck are you? And why would you be talking to this worldwide group of, forward-facing, success-minded contractors?
I had to earn it. That's for sure. To say the least. Yeah, I mean, my background was not an easy one, but it paid off, especially in the last few years. I mean, I grew up in construction, and I don't say that term lightly. My first day on the job, I was 9 years old, and the rest is history. My dad brought me over to the bag of mortar, and I was about 70 pounds, and in bag's 94, and I'm like, "How does this work?" And he goes, "Right here," and he pulls out a knife and he cuts it, and he goes, "5 shovels is a half bag, 10 is a full bag. Have at it, kid." And he walked away. And that was my first day on the job. So
I have a similar story, but it wasn't with concrete. But I mean, how classic Italian that it was concrete. I was getting ready for a soccer game, and my dad came into my bedroom and said, "No, you're going to go paint your house with your Zio, with your uncle." I'm like, I don't know what paint a house means. He's like, "Get changed. You're going." That was it. I didn't play soccer that day. I went and painted a rental property. Not a clue. Yeah, but it's that work ethic that, and immigrants have that work ethic. They just have a go attitude, and I love it. So you get to stab a bag with a knife. That's probably cool for a 9-year-old.
yeah, it was fun. And I just took it seriously. It wasn't a joke. I mean, my family was very passionate about it. And it was this blend of, this is art and this is also how we eat. And it was reminded to us with every meal. It was like, hey, we paid for this meal by Mrs. Jones, step repair project. So I took it seriously. I went to a vocational school. I learned bricklaying. I studied plans. I took second in the country in bricklaying. And
Wow.
For me, it was like, if I'm going to do this thing, it was like my grandfather making wine. He was as passionate making wine as he was laying brick or stone. And I learned that passion and that integrity, and just carried with me in everything that I did.
Yeah. Wow. So how big, just so people understand, tell us about your crew, the size of the crew, the layout, what you guys specialize in.
Yeah. So we have, it varies a little bit depending on how much labor there is in the job, but we typically have, I would say 18 to 20 guys at any point in the field. We've got an office. We do residential, commercial, and prevailing wage. So we have 3 verticals. We do masonry and concrete, which are technically 2 different trades, but to my family, they weren't. So
what do you like better, placing concrete or doing masonry?
I like how you said place. That tells me you know what you're talking about. Look at that. I love it. I really like the masonry side of it. I like stonework the best. Physically doing it, stonework.
Yeah. I have this secret dream. It's gone now because I'm too old, but I'd love to learn how to build dry stone retaining walls. Just like the 3-foot dry stone. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It might be genetic.
I fell in love with that too. That was my thing. My grandfather was on a job, was about 10 years old, and I was trying to break this big rock. And he comes over to me and he says, no. And he just grabs the hammer and chisel out of my hand. He looks at the grain of the stone, and he goes, tink, one hit, and it split right open. And I was like, that was art. So cool to me. Yeah, it's art. Exactly.
Yeah. You can, I don't know what you know, but I know when I'm listening to a mason, by the sound of the hammer, that he knows what he's doing. You hear tung, tung, tink, tung, tung, tink. And that's it. But you also know the laborer over the other side, because you hear smash, 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 swear word, smash, smash.
Exactly. That's very accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. So, everybody listening to the show is a business owner in the construction trades. They're not all masons. You happen to be a mason. People on this are roofers, cabinet makers. Lots of cabinet makers listen to this. Home builders, general contractors. Any sort of trade, renovations and new home building, commercial and also residential. But what can we learn from you on this? On this angle of business, because we're actually in the business of the construction business. We're not, no offense, but you're not actually a mason. You're running a business. You happen to do masonry.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm actually a licensed general contractor. I don't advertise that publicly, but so I'm very, very well versed in all construction. I just chose to stay very niche in this because it was what I was most passionate about. But I think, there's a lot to learn and a lot we can cover. I remember sitting with my dad at 9 years old when advertising and growing a business was nothing. This is a real story. I sat with him at a pizza shop and we used to meet with the guy from the Yellow Pages. And he would say, "Hey, Mr. DiBara, how are you?" We'd order a pizza, soda, right? I was a kid. And they'd say, "How's business?" And my dad'd be like, it's okay. It's not, it's all right. He says, "Here's what I think. Half-page ad, we'll get things up a little bit." He says, "A lot of your competitors are using icons. Do you have an icon you'd like?" And he pulls out this book and it's got little graphics. And I can remember going through, and that's what it was. And he's like, if you really want to hit it hard, we could do a full page. And that was the only advertising decision my dad made for 3 to 6 months. It was either quarterly or semi-annually.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we've gotten into the age of, and we talked a little bit about this, about social media and websites, and you've seen the evolution of all these different elements. And I've kind of been in the back seat, remembering those stories, but also paying attention to, wow, there's some really powerful tools here. And the businesses that are being rewarded are the ones that are quickly identifying what they are, how to maximize them, and also how to integrate them, because the integration is important.
Yeah. The whole website thing is still unknown. And I have to take a step back too, because it used to be you could be good enough at a website and make it work. But now it's a trade on its own. Like the whole internet world, you have somebody who's graphic, you've got somebody who's a writer, you've got somebody who does, this magic word SEO, but then you've got on-page SEO, you've got off-page SEO, then you have squeeze pages, landing pages, email drip campaigns. These are all specialties. And so when I hear a contractor saying, we're a framing contractor, we take care of our own website, I don't know. I don't even know where to start. You can take care of your own website. Your niece can take care of it for you too. But that's just like me trying to change the oil in my car. I can do it, but I can't do anything else,
Yeah, and the analogy I give is especially to really seasoned contractors who grew up doing, or spent a lot of time physically doing the work. It's almost like a homeowner saying, "I think I can install all of XYZ, which is respective to your trade." And you kind of look at them and you're like, "Well, you can, but there's a few things you pick up doing this 20 or 30 years that perhaps you might not be able to catch on a video," or, I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean that, genuinely. It's like it's almost like we forget how much goes into our trade. And like you said, respectively, these are people who spent 20 years doing nothing more than just mastering copywriting and headlines, or, website layout, or, when you land on a website, what's that, that main 80% real estate, what does that look like? How does it get people to interact?
Yeah. Well, you and I decided today that we're going to talk about marketing for contractors, which is it's an insanely hot topic, but it's also a little bit weird because right now business is just flowing in. So if we're already busy, why would I need to do marketing?
Yeah, great question. I think now's the best time to do it. I mean, Warren Buffett has a saying. He says, "When the tide comes in, you'll see who's swimming with no pants." And that saying really hit me. I heard it first about 3 years ago. And it's like, now is the time to start preparing for when things are not so great. And we know that not so great is predictably going to happen at some point. It might be a year, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, but we know it's coming. And so, it's a matter of, well, what does preparation look like, AKA mastering marketing, and how do we do it? I think understanding the tools is really, really important.
Which tools? What do you mean by the tools?
Marketing tools. Social media is a great tool. And I use the word tool intentionally because they're tools. They're a means to achieve an end goal, right? The end goal being ideal clients.
That's the point. If you were to flip the question back to me, why would I market right now when things are busy? I would say because not all clients are created equally. And in the absence of choice, I'm forced to make a bad decision, right? Mm-hmm. Go look at some of your buddies and the relationships they've ended up with girls. And you're like, dude, you should have dated more, right? In the absence of choice, we're forced to make a bad decision. And so if I don't have good leads coming in, then I have to take the leads I've got. And when we don't know, if we can't be picky about the jobs we're doing, we take any job and we think all jobs are the same, but they're not. The profitability is better on some jobs. Our crew is just set up. are companies just set up to do certain types of jobs and make money at it all day long. And there's other ones that we're not. And we have to go and be picky. Now's the time to be picky because we can.
Yeah. And to further that, I think now's the time to test. Now's the time that we can afford to test different things, because there's this almost like artificial safety net of so much business being so readily available that now's the time to test some of these different strategies. Like we're doing a little bit more in direct mail. We're testing some different offers. We're testing.
Oh, back to the old stuff. I love direct mail. It still works.
It still works. I mean, we did a historical homes campaign where we're going after historically registered homes and some of the masonry and concrete. And I mean, it's just, it allows for, we have a freedom right now that if we don't take advantage of it, I mean, it's, who knows when the next time it'll ever be this plentiful, just by nature.
Yeah. I mean, we're at a point here where the demand is insanely high and the value or the price of materials is through the roof, and it's not slowing things down. I just looked at a report by CB Richard Ellis, CBRE, whatever those stand for. Yeah. And they're predicting this is going to continue, even though, you know, the wood pricing on a residential home has gone up since last April 3 times, just since last April. So I agree with you on that. We've got to test things. When we start to look at marketing, a lot of people say, well, I have a website. I mean, I'm probably okay. What would you say when I say I've got a website, we should be okay?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many elements to marketing. I mean, I think if you don't have a marketing plan, I would argue maybe you're not okay. And I'd say the word maybe, but it's the website is an element of a marketing plan. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, who is our ideal? The way I look at it is this: who is our ideal client? Yeah. And what is the plan in which to acquire that ideal client? And the website sits far underneath the marketing plan, right? It's an execution of the ideology. Yeah, it's a tool. Exactly. And so it's almost like saying, well, I want to build and design a house. And it's like, here's my hammer. I have a hammer. And it's like, well, great, but we need to know how big is the house? What's our budget for the house? Yeah. You know, who's designing the house? What kind of house are we going for? You're right. The hammer will be needed at some point. And when it is, it'll be extremely useful, especially if it's the right one.
Well, Martinez, 15 ounce. That's what you want. Yeah, the titanium hammer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, I'm trying to get those guys on the show. If anybody knows how I can get the Martinez guys on here, let me know. I want them as guests. I just want to hear like all their cool tools and all this. Anyways, you know what I often see with websites is that, there's so many offers coming at people right now, you know, through email or even through the guys that are the Yellow Pages guys. We'll put our website up for you. And it's good, but it's, you know what I mean when I say small g good? Mm-hmm. Like it's good. It's good enough. But it doesn't really reflect the quality and the pride that typically a tradesman is putting into their product and service. And it doesn't then attract the right kind of client. And so there's this frustration. We've got a website, but we're not getting the right clients. I don't know if our website's working. And it's because you're trying to put like a carousel pony in a real horse race. You're like, well, yeah, you got a horse, but it's the one that's used to walking in a circle around a carousel, and you're up against, you know, fast horses on a fast track. You're just not going to get the kind of clients you want. Where do I start if I have a website that's good but not doing what I want?
Yeah, and you know, you touch on something so important, and it is hard. I think, I mean, at least in my circle, I know so many contractors who have been burned. You know, they've done the $10,000 or $30,000 website, and you look at it and you're like, ooh, that was not.
Yeah,
you know,
but they don't. I feel bad for them. They just don't know, and somebody comes along and song and dances them.
Yeah, the website game, that whole kind of industry, I think really ideally talking to someone like you who knows this. I mean, we do too, but knowing somebody who's had a good experience, really looking at who's achieved the end goal. Yeah. Right. So who has a website and is just killing it? Who's somebody who, you know, in the space, locally or not locally, that is just doing really well. Like one of the things we did a while back when I was trying to find a good SEO company is I was like, well, who comes up, you know, when I search these terms organically? So that's underneath the ads. And then we click and you scroll down to the bottom of the website and there's that little icon of the company that's doing their SEO. And I'm like, maybe we'll give them a call, you know?
So walk people through that again. So you look at your own local listings and you see somebody else who's doing well locally.
Yep.
Right. And let's just say it's Jack's Plumbing for the sake of the name. If Jack's Plumbing is actually listening, congratulations. We just promoted you. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you go to Jack's Plumbing website and then you scroll to the bottom of his website and it says site proudly built by Dominic, whoever built it. And then you go, I'm going to contact Dominic.
Yeah, that's one secret. Other ones are some of the so you want to look at somebody who's doing really well with their website. I've even done, if you're a smaller town, looking at like the bigger cities, because typically those contractors have bigger budgets. It's more competitive in the cities for bidding on certain keywords, and all that means is they're spending a lot more money, so they're monitoring the results more typically. So looking at those sites of the keywords that come up. So you could have a competitor that's, the nice thing about these online businesses is that they're typically not hyper local. So you can go 60, 80, 100 miles out to a company that's doing your same service and say, wow, they come up in every category that I want and they're right front and center. Well, let's scroll down to their website and see who's doing it.
Yeah, that's an amazing insight, Matt. It is something that's available to all of us, and it always has been. Whatever city you're in, let's just say for the sake of it, you're in Seattle. Well, you're probably not going to call another Seattle contractor who does exactly what you do. Let's say slab jacking or mold remediation or roof. It doesn't matter what it is, right? What you do is you go down the coast. You say, well, who's in Salem, Oregon? Who's in LA? Call the guy and say, listen, will actually even do better. Call somebody in Key West, Florida and say, listen, I'm way on the other coast, but I really like your website. Can I ask you a couple of questions? We're in the same business. They know you're not going to pack up your bags from Seattle and come down to Key West. And so they're more likely to talk to you. It just takes the cojones to call the guy.
Well, and that's the neat thing about this industry that I found, construction as a whole, is that we really are, I think you have kind of three tiers. You have these companies that advertise a lot, but aren't actually doing the work. They're distributing and selling leads, but they look like companies. It'll be like, Amazing Remodels is the company. And it's like, they don't really have a name. Yeah, they don't have a name because they're brokering. Then you have companies who have really made it and have this really big corporate kind of structure, and they own multiple companies or entities. And then you have a subset of people who are trying to get there, and they're being, a really great website, awesome marketing, ideal clients just being thrown at you through your marketing efforts. And the nice thing is that to your point, contractors love helping. I mean, when I was really trying to figure all this out, I was going to the biggest people and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Like, how does this work? What works for you? And they were so willing to help. I want to just throw that out there because it might seem a little counterintuitive because it's like, well, they're a competitor and I'm like, but it doesn't, once you get past the 30, 40, 50 mile radius, typically it's not a competitor. It's another hardworking tradesperson, contractor.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key is you got to get out there. So first of all, people listening to this show are probably nodding their heads because they already get it. They wouldn't be listening to this show unless they were already, I call them facing forward. You know what I mean? Like somebody that's facing forward in their business, they got their shoulders back, they're standing proud. And they're like, okay, what's next? They're going to find a show like mine and say, Dominic gets good guests. Today you're our guest, Matt. You're doing great. Right. And they're like, okay, give me the good stuff. Give me the info. Then they're going to take action. How many other people don't do that? They don't take action. They don't seek new information. They don't read books or listen to audios, or they don't join their industry association, right? You're going to find out when you get out of your own head how to do these things better. And then ultimately you got to pull the pin. You have to invest. It's like if I said to you, I want that dry stone retaining wall, but I only want to pay $1,000. You're going to say, well, Dom, you get one rock and I'll give you an old trowel.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. There has to be a budget attached to it, which goes back to, like you said, your ideal client and your sales process. How much do you think you could make from new leads in a year from business generated through the website or social media?
Yeah. And there's a lot of clues in industries that are not construction. Like if you look at some massive brands, one thing they have in common, if I shouted out some massive brands that you and I both know, there's one thing they all have in common. They spend tons of money on marketing and advertising, tons. And so I think there's another misconception in the industry, which is that, we can grow. A lot of it's because we did so well with word of mouth for so long. And then it was the yellow pages. And then it was a myriad of the two. It's almost like, well, why should I have to spend all this money? That was my belief. When I realized, I was like, whoa, this needs to be my marketing budget. I worked it backwards and understood, okay, my client acquisition cost is this. even though the math made sense and I was like, okay, you know, I make X amount on a client, I'm extremely profitable, I make this decision. The bottom line figure blew my mind. I was like, I have to spend how much? But you realize in other companies and other industries, I mean, sometimes our construction as a whole is actually less to acquire a customer than other industries.
Yeah. So, you know, it's very interesting that you just mentioned something called acquisition cost. So how much does it cost to buy a customer? Because that's what we're doing with our marketing. We're buying a customer, right? And then the opposite side of that coin, if you will, or the, you know, I'm doing, for those of you who can't see the podcast, I'm doing that hands up and down. Matt and I are two Italian guys doing a podcast. Of course, there's lots of hand movements going on here.
Yes.
But the other side of the coin is lifetime value, right? What does it cost me to buy a client? And then what's the lifetime value? What am I going to make from that client? And then, you know, hopefully I have systems in place to get referrals so that I increase the lifetime value by piggybacking. You know, you did a house on Winchester Street, then you did their neighbor's house, then you did one across the street, then you got two houses in the cul-de-sac. Well, now if you spent $1,000 to buy the first client, but you got 5 clients, your acquisition cost per client went from 1,000 to 200 because you've got a marketing machine working, right? That's what you're talking about here, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. It spawns new business. And that's the biggest enemy to the Google pay-per-clicks and some of these, you know, advertising mediums, which is why I think my belief is that it's not more mainstream. A lot of this information, what you're talking about and I mean, are just phenomenal at is that because it's an enemy to paying to, you know, because the advertising marketing industry would much rather have you pay to acquire, you know, the house on Winchester Street and then have that neighbor have to search, you know what I mean, to find somebody else. So there's, you know, there's a reason this isn't everywhere commonplace. Just, you know what I mean? Just hanging out all over the place.
Well, because nobody trained you on it. The marketing, the advertising people who come to your door aren't going to train you on how to reduce your acquisition cost. They want you to buy every lead through them.
Yes, exactly.
Let's switch to that for a second, if you don't mind. So once you've got a job, I just made up Winchester Street. I'm sure it's everywhere. Once you've got a job on Winchester Street, what do you do for that hyper local? I call it farming an area. What do you do that's the old fashioned methods of going after more clients in that area?
Gosh, we do all sorts of stuff. I'm glad you asked that. I mean, typically we'll do like some door hangers. So we do door hangers that say, pardon the dust, or, you know, we're going to pardon the noise. So we let them know that we're going to be working, and that's a great marketing tool. So not only is it classy and doesn't come off like you're soliciting business, it's just letting them know. So we'll hang that on all the doors. Like, hey, whoa, what are you doing? Oh, we're actually working on so-and-so's house. We just want to let you know from these hours, it'll be a little bit noisy just the first day because we're doing demo. They go, oh, thank you so much. By the way, if you're interested, it has our services on the back. Like, you know, that works so really well. Yeah. That's one of them. What else do we do? We'll do sometimes some postcard mailers within that area. Let them know we're working in the area and then put what the house is. We also do geofencing. So
so now back to the social media. Okay, Matt, what is geofencing? What is this geofencing you speak of?
Basically, we put an invisible, think of it like an invisible outline in a map. You're tracing an area of a map, and that's the area where your ads are going to be targeted. Right. So we know that there's leverage in having worked at someone's house that's very close by, within, you know, a mile radius, because you can point back to it and say, this is the house we did. Oh, go stop by, talk to them. Ask them. It's so leverageable, and it was one of the most underutilized things we had in the business.
It's insane. I would imagine that a lot of people don't know about it. So let me try to take a stab at it and bring us up to. I'm going to try to do this as educational as possible. So Matt, you're doing a house on Winchester Street, and then what you do is you go back to your computer guy, your marketing person, and you say, I want you to geofence Winchesterton Landing, which has Winchester Street in the middle of it, right? You got Winchester Avenue, Winchester Cul-de-sac, Winchester Mews, Winchester View, all those different Winchester streets, and it's all inside Winchester Landing. And so you put a geofence, an electronic marketing fence, if you will. You just draw a map, a square around it, or a circle, and you say to your marketing people, hammer this area with advertising. So anybody whose cell phone is active in that area, anybody whose mobile device, iPads included, please send them this ad. Is that what you do?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I love it. That works really well. And the reason it works well is because it's a built-in testimonial. You know, when we walk down the street with our dog, we've got our little doggy bag in our hand, right? And we see the sign that says, oh, Matt DiBara is working here. and my wife and I finally have a chance without the kids to walk through the neighborhood. We're like, you know what? We need our patio redone. Or wouldn't it be nice to have some pavers put in? Or wouldn't it be nice to get a retaining wall? Snap goes the picture with your sign right there. And it's the same thing when you do that geofencing or geo-targeting, it's called. So for people listening, if you don't have that in place, shoot me a message or ask your marketing person about geofencing. It's not contract fencing. It's not the kind of fencing some of my listeners do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's profitable.
It works great because we're trying to build that image with people that we're active and busy in the area. Okay, so you do door hangers, which is great because the cost of door hangers for something like Vistaprint is pennies. Mm-hmm. It's pennies. You just have to make sure. I call it the 5-5-10 strategy, Matt. So when I show up on a job site, 5 houses on the left, the 5 houses on the right, and 10 houses across the street, get the flyer, get the door hanger. It's so easy to do, and get one of your junior guys to do it or do it yourself and smile and meet people and you'll get more business. So you do door hangers. Do you do signage?
Oh yeah. The yard signs. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is your vehicle wrapped or what do you do for signage on the vehicle?
The vehicles have signs. Yep.
Okay. And then
wraps.
Wraps. What other things do you do in the local market? Oh, you said direct mail.
Do the direct mail. Yep. We'll send out postcards. So physical postcard in addition to seeing the ad.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. All of those things work together. And the reason to invest money in that is because after you paid $1,000, I'm just going to say, through an AdWords campaign to get that client on Winchester Street, now we want to reduce our cost by splitting it up amongst other jobs, correct?
Yeah. And to your point about them all working together, I remember reading statistics on direct mail, which is the postcards that are mailed out that have your company information and usually an offer that you have. And I was reading that on the third attempt, it's an exponential response. And so yes. I didn't believe that. I was like, there's no way. They were like, yeah, trust me. And I'm like, I'm going to mail the same or somewhat similar thing out. And on the third time, they're magically going to call me. And we did it with this.
More people will call.
Yeah, more people. Exactly. More people. Thank you. Yeah. And I was blown away. The results were just, we were tracking this thing and it was like the first attempt, X number of calls. Let's say it was, 6 calls. Second attempt, we got 6 calls. Third attempt, 27 calls. I'm like, what? To the same people.
It's because you're believable now. Right. Mm-hmm. And you know who's really good at that? Typically, I don't know if it's the same in your neighborhood, but realtors are really good with that. They do the just listed and just sold, and they just keep hammering a neighborhood. And it's called farming. In real estate marketing, they call that farming a neighborhood. So they'll look at that neighborhood of, let's say, 1,000 properties, and they just keep hitting it with all sorts of marketing material. Before you know it, you start to think they're the only game in town. There's 1,000 realtors that operate in your market, maybe 1,001, but they just keep marketing so that you think they're the only one. And we need to do the same thing, regardless of our trade.
Yeah, realtors are an industry that, the whole home space, mortgage brokers, realtors, studying and looking at what they're doing can glean some really interesting tips as to what you might be able to borrow for our industry, construction as a whole, because they definitely, there's 479,000 licensed realtors in California. It's extremely competitive. It's something where, how do you justify what the skill set is? For them to be really great, they have to be good at marketing. So that's a great industry to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? For them to be great, they have to be good at marketing. It's the same as us. And I think a lot of tradespeople, I know I did it when I had my own company as a painter. I'm like, I'm a good painter. Why don't people just call me? Because they don't know I'm a good painter, and they're 2 streets over. They're never going to see me painting. They're not going to know that I take more care than anybody else. It doesn't matter. What they need to know is that I'm a painter and that I'm confident in my work and that I'm active in the area, and then I can come and prove myself. And that's how I get more business. Matt, where do we go from here? This has been great so far.
Yeah. No, in terms of where to contact me, or?
Yeah. Like if somebody, first, do you have any other insights into marketing that we've missed? Because we talked about the online world. We talked about the offline world. You looped it back to the online world by reminding us about geofencing. What if somebody has a website and is stuck and they don't know what to do? How do they start reaching out? You said one of them is to go look at a competitor, scroll to the bottom. People already know to contact me because that's what we do here. What's another option that people do?
That's a good question. reaching out to contractors that they know that are doing well. I mean, some people will go to like if you're involved in any trade associations, so go to them.
Yeah.
They'll reach out to them. But some of those, I mean, I don't always recommend that because it's
depends on the association.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's who's paying the most amount of money. So I would say you really want to trust somebody that's in the space, like the terminology you're using and your experience. I mean, that I would highly advise, getting a referral from somebody that's in the space. I don't know that there's any other way that I'd even.
Yeah. I guess it's the same as homeowners. When they need something done, they're like, hey, who did your pool deck? And they're like, oh, Matt DiBara. Oh, let's look him up. And then if anybody Googles Matt DiBara, you come up 1,000. What's the Kardashians and Matt DiBara? What's going on? Are you guys in a fight or something? What's going on there?
No. They had their deed stolen on one of their homes. And so
the actual physical paper of their deed, or somebody tried to take their home?
Yeah, no, somebody took the deed was misplaced, and there was some questions around who signed it and where. So yeah, we offered to help if they needed any help with negotiating that or getting to the bottom of it. So
interesting. Well, the one thing that I have noticed about you that I admire, it's why I asked you to be on the show, is that you are an excellent marketer as well.
Thank you.
You're very good. You have a podcast too. I mean, you're here talking to us on the contractor side, but you actually advise homeowners too.
Yeah, I'm passionate. I'm very passionate about both sides of this. I mean, my dad did everything right by convention. He worked really hard, but I realized that, the best marketed company, the best educated company in terms of how to acquire customers, the terminology that we're using, and that's who won. I had a I'll tell one quick story. I had a general contractor, and he was on a job, and we charged him about 10 grand to do this wall at the time. And I remember the client had come out, and he had a really great marketing website and all this stuff, and he advertised doing all the services that we do. He brokered the deal. He subcontracted, and he got $38,000 to do this wall, and we charged 10. And I was like, and I went home, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, how did he do that? And it was because he was a better marketer. He wore branded shirts. He looked so professional. And it was just this entire client experience. He knew where to find him. He knew how to represent it. And I'm thinking to myself, he made more money just showing up and picking up the check than we made beating on rocks all day. And I was like, something has to change.
Tink.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I have to learn what he's, reverse engineer what's happening. So it really is. I mean, I don't think one of the biggest takeaways for me was, and hopefully for people listening, this will be helpful, is you don't know how high is. And what I mean by that is we don't know what we're missing until we really start delving in. Like my website, for a while there, I thought it was good, lower G, little G, good.
Yeah.
And, but I was confident with it. I was tough headed, and we did a rebrand, and we put in some strategic videos, and I can't even tell you the amount of times I go to a client, I'm like, they're just sold. I'd walk up and they're
just
sold.
done by the time you walk out.
Yeah. And they go, I really loved your video introducing yourself, and we felt so comfortable with you. And I'm going, my biggest regret in all this marketing and everything that I've done is that I didn't do it 7, 8, 9. I mean, I reverse engineer the numbers, and I'm like, how much money I left on the table by not working with somebody that understands this like yourself and just, making the investment. I mean, really it came down to, like you said, it comes down to making just a financial investment and a commitment. It's a commitment to be great, not, capital G, great.
Capital G. I like that. Yeah.
So
that's good. Well, the reality, we hear this from homeowners. If we talk about homeowners right now, I'm going to get 3 prices. And in our head, we're like, good luck. I showed up. Those other 2 probably aren't going to. But the reality is if I show up and they love my website and they love all my social media and I'm consistent, like you said, branded and I'm clean and like physically, like I'm not dirtying their house and I'm respectful and all of the things that you would expect, I can command a higher price. And the reason is homeowners are not professional buyers. Now, I'm not here talking about putting one over on a homeowner, but they can't establish the value. The reason they want 3 quotes is to know what the ballpark is. But that's the same as asking how long is a piece of string? I don't know. How long is a piece of string, right? It's a piece of string. So if I come in and I say that retaining wall is $38,500, and then you show up and say that retaining wall is 10 grand, immediately in my mind as a homeowner, I'm thinking, oh man, the $38,500 guy is a professional company. They know what they're doing. Who's this $10,000 guy who's going to have ex-cons come in here using my tools? We got to go with the safe bet. and you're going to get the better work.
You know, I had a realization. I was reading a book. I wish I could remember the name of it. Doesn't matter. But I had a realization. I said, when a homeowner hears those two numbers, they have a decision. Either $38,000 is too high or 10 grand is too low.
Yeah.
And your job is to inform the homeowner that those numbers are too low, because that's the decision they make. I mean, whenever they move forward, if they get a bid of 38, they get a bid of 12, and they get a bid of 10, the question is, have you created enough belief and enough validity that 10 and 12 are too low? Or have you not done that, at which point they're going to look and say, well, 38 is too high. And that's the ultimate decision any homeowner makes is this number too low or is this number too high? And your job is to market and look good and have all the assets in place, what a lot of which we talked about, so that when they get your number, they're trusting and believing in your number. This is the standard. And anything that's dramatically different from this is either going to be too high or too low from your number. You want you to be the golden flagpole in the ground.
Yeah, the golden flagpole. Nice. I like
that. Yeah. I just made that up.
It's yours. Trademark. Matt DiBara.
Cool.
You know what? This has been an excellent interview. I think you've given a lot of insight to our listeners. So thank you for that. If somebody wants to find you in this wide, wide world, how do we do that? How do we find Matt DiBara?
Just email me or I'm online, Matt DiBara, DiBaraMasonry.com, or Matt D at the Undercover Contractor is my email address. If you have any, if they want to reach out, but that's me.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your insight here. It's I'm amazed at some of the wisdom that you bring to many of the things we've been talking about, because like, as you mentioned, I used a couple of keywords that made you, that gave you confidence that I kind of know what I'm talking about. You did the same thing when we talked about marketing, and I'm amazed, because marketing is math. We have to remove the emotion. We've got to come down to the numbers, and then we add emotion when we want to get responses. But ultimately, it's a logical thing. So you'll
fall in love with it.
Yeah, you do fall in love with it.
When it works, when you realize to what I said before, how high is high, when you realize you're like, I could have been getting these clients, like, you don't know what you don't know. That is the biggest message I have about marketing, is like, take your business and imagine profitability much higher. Like these are the changes. I'll speak for me. Like my business, I won't make promises about anybody else, but for my business, profitability jumped exponentially. I was able to do less work, make way more money, pay my guys more. Like it filled every single gap in my business that I was feeling at the time.
You said it better than me. And that's what we teach on the show. I don't imagine you listen to the show, although I hope you do in the future. But one of the things that I ask people to do is, when you come on and listen to my show, understand that I want you to be a businessman who happens to be a contractor, not a contractor with a crew. There's a different mindset. And again, that's who listens to the show. People who want to be business minded. We don't have our MBA. I don't have an MBA. No, I mean, and by the way, whether you go to school and get your MBA or you don't, you pay for it either way. You either pay the university or you pay the world. I've paid the world. So you're nodding too. You probably have done the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, Matt, thank you so much for being on the show. Perhaps we'll have you back again in the future as well. If you've got anything going on your side that's exciting, you want to update us on it.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it.
Thank you, Dominic. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.